This
What the heck am I
conference
going to
will
do
now
every
be
other week?
recorded.
Well,
It's like
you
I won't
got
be
Zoom.
lost.
You can still
can
make
still
you
meet
can
up.
still make your crew. Yeah, you got
Yeah,
Zoom.
we can still
We
meet
just
up
can't
on the
afford to put
Discord
you on
too.
GoToMeeting.
Yeah, we'll just meet on Discord. We can
Yeah,
do voice
or
chat on
yeah,
Discord.
there you go, or whatever. There's
I'll
other
post here
platforms.
in a
We
minute.
just
I
go
never leave home, so it's the only time I got to talk to people is when I do this.
right, and
We know.
and it'll change. But I think if we move this down to once every other week, we can produce some content and have it ready and be able to put it out there and say this is what we're going to talk about this next week. And get a little more engagement maybe. You know,
Yeah.
So, and we're trying, we're fluid. We're trying to try new things. We're not trying to just throw it in there, willy nilly. Um, but the revamp that we were trying to do at the beginning, is kind of okay, but it still hit a lull. So we're just constantly trying to evolve. So we're going to do that. I'll fix all the graphics and all of the, things. And we may do some live stuff with CeeLo. Maybe one day, we'll do a photo, in real time from start to finish to a project.
Cool.
One thing, our topic today, and I'll go back to the other thing, and we'll get some of these people in here and not make this the whole topic. But the topic of the webinar today is frequently asked questions or things that need to be addressed in those video shorts or those little pieces of gold, where we can watching an hour long webinar to find one piece of information I can understand can be bad. So whenever we do have that gold, like I was talking about, we'll just take that snippet and make a short out of it, make an article out of it, just post it, whatever. Check this out. This is neat about, focus or whatever we're talking about. So I think that'll help too. We're going to start pushing the content more. Of course, it does transcripts. You can go to the links and read through the transcripts. That's not a lot better, but so we're looking at those things too. Um, so Jim, how does the first 15 minutes work? That's kind of like the intro and the new folks. So let's do
Yes.
that. We do have a lot of regulars on here, so if you haven't been here before, if it's been a while or whatnot, feel free to kick your mic on and introduce yourself. You don't have to. We won't put you on the spot. But if you have any questions or comments or initial things, please feel free to jump in at any time.
I was already calling people out.
Okay,
I
cool.
seen names. I said Clinton, and then
Yeah.
there's a Nick, and
Well,
then there's.
Nick's got his microphone on, so that means he wants to say something, right?
I just want to introduce myself. My name's Nick Borvis. Thinking of starting a business here. I'm retired a few years back, but I'm thinking. I've been talking, emailing back and forth with Grant about a laser. I'm just trying to find a product that I can make that I'm really not interested in these low end products that you make 10 or 20 bucks off of. I'm really looking for a product that's a little bit higher end, and I'm frankly having trouble finding that product. But the idea of getting a laser really appeals to me. So I thought I'd join you guys and see if I can get some ideas.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good way. Look, a lot of people get into lasers because they already have something that they want to make, and of course they're trying to find a tool that'll facilitate that. I like that you're climbing in the back end, and wanting to find a product for that. We've seen some pretty unusual things. Some of them are proprietary, more industrial type things, duck calls, things like that. A lot of people just kind of fall into a niche, and it
The
just kind of takes
industrial
off.
side of things appeals to me. Something more not consumer, non-Etsy kind of thing. Just
Mhm.
something I could do for
So like
on the
marking
manufacturing side of
firearms
things.
or bolts or whatever, you've got a fiber laser, or even you can use a CO2 laser and some marking compound if you needed to make serial plates for equipment or mark them in some way. That's a
The
huge
ADA
business.
signs.
Yeah,
The
signage,
two
all of that kind of
color
thing.
boards and stuff like that you can laser away one color and have a contrasting color underneath.
Yeah.
You can do ADA signs. You can do labels for machinery. Whatever information they want on there. That's a good way to do it.
Lockout, tag out stuff for electricians.
Yeah,
Right.
you could probably even do like replacement body parts, put the serial numbers on knee joints,
Yep.
if you could find your way into something like that. But yeah, the sky's the limit, as far as that goes.
I live in
And-
northern Michigan. It's not a huge manufacturing area. I mean, I come from Detroit, which was, a huge manufacturing, but up here it's not as much on the manufacturing side. But that's more or less the kind of thing I'd like to get into. Large quantities of orders, things like that, as opposed to just like an Etsy product that I'm selling or things like that. I'm not opposed to that. Just I'm just trying to come up with some ideas here.
And something I tell a lot of people that I talk to in the beginning is your area is going to dictate a lot of where you go with the machine. You're going to get into it thinking you're going to do one thing, and then all of a sudden your market or your area dictates a totally different aspect. Like I live around some lakes. I live in a lake area, and you could easily use the Great Lakes to your advantage as far as making large map pieces. People eat that stuff up if they're in that area.
Hey,
Yeah,
Brian.
there's a ton of people doing that stuff up here.
Yeah, I think it's you that's got the feedback coming through.
Do I?
There's an echo.
Yep.
And I think it's you because I was trying to watch the mics. Test. Yeah, it was Brian.
I
Was it?
noticed it as well.
It could have been me. I just muted.
No,
too.
I was watching the names on that was lighting up, and Brian was lighting up when CeeLo was talking.
That's weird.
Yeah, it is,
Talk
especially
again,
since you got a
CeeLo.
headset.
Yeah, especially
No, it's
with your
even me
headphones.
talking. Even with you having a headset, do you have an external speaker on, Brian?
Well, that's okay. I'll be quiet. No, I have no external speakers on, or if I do, I'm not supposed to. They're coming through my headset.
That's weird.
Wait.
But
Okay.
there's tons of industrial applications, from serial marking for pharmaceuticals to, even vape boxes. I mean, the limits are crazy.
I bought my laser to just the primary product was I do support and work for a company that makes dust boots for CNC laser or CNC routers. And I cut the acrylic now. It's a mix of produced aluminum parts, 3D printed parts, and acrylic. And he's running, I think, 36 Prusa printers in a print farm pretty much 24 hours a day, but he only had one laser, and he couldn't keep up with the laser parts. And so I cut anything from 1/8 inch to 1/2 inch thick acrylic for different parts. And I mean, the 35-100, I mean, it'll cut the 1/8 inch stuff so fast. I mean, I order the 24 by 36 sheets. I can cut 20 sheets of acrylic up in one day. But then I've also got a CNC router, and I mean, I've just used the laser to make all kinds of things, just craft products, signage. It's really kind of just a bonus to have it. I'm making the parts that it takes to pay for it. So
Right.
the other 95% of the time, I can just play with it.
Right.
Yeah, it's like I'm a little hesitant to, like, if you buy it, it will come kind of thing. With the with the investment that's involved in the laser. And so that's why I've been just every day, just like I spend like hours a day trying to figure out some stuff to do. I'm looking at actually 3 or 4 different businesses. A print farm, a 3D print farm is another one that I'm looking at. And I do appreciate all you guys' suggestions. It's very helpful. I'm glad I joined in today. I do have a few questions on lasers, though. I don't know what your format is, and when is there like bring it up now kind of thing, or is it?
This is primarily to answer questions. So if you have questions, we'll answer them. We're agile enough. We can alter it a little bit. We've been known to skew off track every once in a while. If you have questions, then absolutely we want to field those for sure. So you got the talking stick.
All right. Well, So I got a question on lenses. I've looked at you guys' lenses, but there's a guy who there's a YouTube guy that I know you guys know well. I forget his name now. Computer Creations. I forget his name now.
Robert
Robert,
You know, yeah, Robert. He's a big proponent of Thunder, and I really like his stuff. But I noticed that he was talking about a third-party lens, and I didn't even know you could get a third-party lens for. And when I look at some of the lenses out there, they're far cheaper than what you guys are selling for them. And just if you could just give me an objective opinion, is there a quality difference there, or is it just
very much.
a markup?
Yeah, well, some of it is markup. I mean, everybody's got to make their piece, but primarily there is a huge quality difference. Like, I'll give you, for instance, when I used to rebuild the Chinese laser clones, we call them eBay clones or whatever. They're generally, inferior quality, as compared to some of these top shelf ones. And the very first thing we did in them to gain a remarkable increase in performance is take the stock optics that they shipped in it and throw them in the trash and put some decent optics in there. So kind of like when you get a computer, the first thing you do want to do is max it out with memory. If you get a cheap Chinese laser or a cheap laser in general, the first thing you typically want to do is pull the optics out and toss them in the trash. So we use 2.6 optics. That is one of the premier manufacturers or growers of this crystal. It's actually a permeable crystal, and they grow it. And I think American Photonics is probably the one that you're thinking about, Walter. He has a lens set that does fit our machines. The 21 millimeter diameter lens tube is the correct kit for that. His optics are great. He builds stuff for the military and NASA, so it ought to be good enough for Thunder. 2.6 is the other one, and that's a real high grade US made raw material for these optics, for the zinc selenide. So quality is huge. You can find some Amazon lenses also that are 2.6 optics and CVD coating. But then you'll find a lot of junk on Amazon, and you definitely don't want to go with a high-end laser and then cheap out on the optics. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like buying a Ferrari and putting watered down gas in it,
I
the ones
use
that I
the
came
American
across
Photonics lenses, and I love them. I mean, I just had the 4-inch and the 1.5-inch, and for the cut and a half inch acrylic, the 4-inch is, it does the job.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
it was the American Photonics. It was American Photonics that I was looking at. They've got like a 3-piece kit where it's got the I think it's got or a 4-piece kit or 3-piece kit that's got, I think, all three of your lenses, a 1.5, a 2, 2.5, and a 4. And it's like $200.
Yeah.
It's like $200. So, I mean, all your lenses, if I bought all your lenses, it'd be substantially more than that. So I just was curious if and I know maybe it's impolitic to ask you guys about somebody else's lenses, but
no, though a lot of people use those American Photonics lenses. They won't work with our autofocus system, so you can't use autofocus with them, and some other things like that. One of the reasons that we stick to what we have, we don't mind what accessories you put on there as long as you don't do something crazy to the machine and mess it up, that kind of thing. We're not going to dictate where you buy your lenses, although, the stuff we have, we know is proven to be good, and we have the backing and all that stuff, and the US support where you can get you one in a couple days if there's a problem, that kind of thing. But yeah, you can get whatever you want as far as accessories go. We just try to keep our offerings narrow so that we don't have so much to manage. If we had 5 different rotaries and 12 different lens manufacturers and you choosing from all of them, that's a nightmare to keep track of and monitor performance rates and, mean time between failure and all that stuff. So there's a lot of it that goes on in the back end about inventory that also matters,
I mean, having the other lenses is great, but I don't think a lot of people realize that the stock 2-inch lens that comes with the laser will do so much. I mean, it's really versatile.
It is the Swiss Army knife of lenses, as far as that goes. Now, I'll preface this by saying I'm not a maker. I don't make a lot of things or design a lot of things. I don't produce a lot of things. I starve to death. People have probably heard me say that a million times. And I use my 2-inch lens for just about everything. even cutting 3/4 inch acrylic or 1/2 inch plywood. You know, could I get a better result with the 4-inch? Maybe, but it does great for me, so I just let her rip. So I do 99% of the stuff I ever do with the stock lens. So.
All right, the next area that I needed to answer was like the one I'm looking at is the Nova 51, because it's big enough that, you know, I don't want to make a wrong decision in buying too small of a laser and then having to turn around and upgrade it. And the price between the smaller one and the bigger one is not, it's not huge. I just figure pay a little more extra up front and make sure, you know, I don't think I'd ever need the real big one for what I'll be doing. But I'm trying to figure out the 100 versus 130 watt. You know, when I was talking to Grant, he said if you put extra air on the 100, if you upgrade the compressor, you can cut through, you know, because what I'm really looking at doing is maybe instead of getting a laser and a CNC, you know, being able to do a lot of wood cutting on the laser. I don't know if I'm not thinking right about it. It just seems to me that it would give me I could do a lot on as I would a small CNC, you know, on a laser if it was powerful enough to cut, say,
Sure.
up to 3/4 inch plywood. And I realize that, you know, there's glues and things like that, you know, you just really got to watch nowadays with what you get with the supply chains and all that, you know, finding quality wood to cut. But
Sure.
philosophically, I'm wondering, you know, if I wasn't going to be a big CNC user, could I use a slightly bigger laser instead of a CNC? And again, I'm an IT guy. I come from an IT background. I owned an IT management company. So this is a little outside of my comfort zone and knowledge zone, but so that, you know, if you guys could address that, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah. So
You can
the
cut
51's
details. You can cut details with a laser that you're never going to be able to get with a CNC.
Yeah.
And speed
And
is totally different.
yeah. Now, between the 100 and 130 watt, you're looking at speed, how fast you can cut thicker stuff, really. If you're going to do a pretty good amount of engraving, you can engrave with the 130 just fine. Everybody does it every day. You can dial the 100 watt in at the lower end of the spectrum in a lot easier than you can the 130 in some cases. Chris will probably argue with me, CeeLo, because he can do anything on the low end of a C130 tube. But you're going to be looking at a little bit of speed, really. The 60 watt machines, the Nova 24 will cut 1/2 inch, you know, ply like butter. It's slow, but it'll cut it in one pass with external air. So the 130 watt machine, you know, if you are going to cut out die sub blanks out of 1/2 inch MDF all day long, if that's the purpose of that laser, 130 watt all the way, get the biggest tube you can put in it. You know,
So it's harder to engrave on the bigger one though?
It's not harder to engrave. On these DC excited tubes, you can go so low with the output before it starts getting sporadic. You don't have a uniform beam signature and it'll just kind of sputter out and quit. And on an 80 watt tube, for instance, you may be able to fire it at 1 or 2 or 3 watts, you know, at its lowest while it still has a stable beam signature. On the 130 watt tube, you may not be able to fire it, you know, its lowest, it might be 12 or 15 or 20 watts, which if you're trying to engrave acrylic, that might be a little hot unless you mitigate that with speed. So that's why our machines are capable of going 1,000 millimeters per second, although that's not always the best, especially if you're trying to reproduce dots, because there's some other limitations with that. You can jump down a bunch of rabbit holes between the 100 and the 130. I'll let CeeLo go on that.
If speed is not a huge issue, the 100 would be better all around laser is what you're saying?
Yeah.
A lot of people lean that way. CeeLo has 130 and he has a lot of experience with it, and he's a maker, so we'll let him give his 2 cents on it too.
Yeah, I mean, you can compensate a lot for speed where you can't fluctuate the power down low. So I do a lot of photo engraving where you have to be right on that threshold of the laser tube shutting off, because you're just kind of like picking away at whatever material you're using. But the 130, I've been able, especially with the way that we match our tube and power supply, it's so smooth and it triggers so well that I think it's better than a cheap Chinese laser at 100 watts. I think we have a better response time and more consistent than some of these other lasers out there. So I haven't had any issue from a 80 watt, a 60 watt, an 80 watt, 100 and 130. I've been able to reproduce pretty much the same thing as far as quality goes.
Yeah.
Now, having the flexibility with the 130 to be able to engrave whatever you want. Maybe you're not going to do photos, you're just going to do regular vector engraving, but every once in a while you want to cut a full inch of acrylic. You'll be able to do that. You won't be able to do a full inch acrylic with 100. You think so, Brian?
Maybe. I mean,
It'd be tough.
I cut 3/4 with my 80, you know, so that's not too much more of a stretch.
Yeah.
But that's another 1/4 inch and, you know, another 20 watts. I don't know. I think 100 watt would cut.
But for
Another
but
thing
for an
Brian will
all-around
tell you
laser
too,
user, I think
you're getting a true 100 watt tube if you buy 100 watts. If you buy 100 watt OhmTech, you're not going to get 100 watts out of it. So that was really something important to me with Thunder. I mean, it's,
Yeah,
you
and
get what you pay for.
we don't advertise that a lot, but like for instance, I've got a Nova 35 80 watt machine. And it has to produce 10% over that 80 watts. So I'm at 88.6 watts at the third mirror. In order for that to happen, I have a 90 watt tube and a 100 watt power supply in my 80 watt laser. So we build it in, you know, on the top side. We give you headroom. So, and you can run this laser at 100%, and that's what Chris was talking about earlier. Also, if you're going to cut, you can run it at 100% if you want to, and you won't exceed the manufacturer's operating specification for the current capacity of that tube. So you will remain within spec, and you don't have to watch a meter, you know, to make sure that you stay within those specifications. So.
And your air
One
is
final
important
question. I don't
too.
want
If you
What's
put
important?
the external air on, and Brian, there's an article I bought a pressure gauge, a little digital thing. There's a whole article about it, but it really helps with dialing in cut power and engraving.
Yeah, that for the repeatability. So one of the biggest performance enhancements you can add to these, if you're going to cut thicker materials, especially organics, not so much composites, the acrylics and things don't take as much air, but is put in an external compressor on, you know, like a shop compressor. So the thing that comes with it, and that's pretty standard across the board and has been for decades for these machines, is a commercial aquarium pump. And it's kind of a different system. It doesn't have a blow off valve and it's not regulated, you know, for pressure and have a holding tank and all that. And it works fine. You know, there's a lot of people that never upgrade, but if you're going to cut, you can put an external compressor on, and it depends on how much money you want to spend on whether you want a $150 compressor or a $10,000 compressor. You know, it's kind of up to what your personal preference and what your situation is. And that will help you a lot more than just about anything. I'll put it this way. If I had a choice between a 100 watt Nova 51 and external air and a 130 watt Nova 51 with the stock air, I would choose the 100 watt with the external air first, if that makes sense.
So could I cut 3/4 inch plywood with a 100 watt with the external air?
Well, yes, it'd be slow, but you could do it.
Okay.
And when
So
I
the
say
difference
slow,
between
it'd probably be faster than a CNC if you don't want to
Okay.
break your bit.
So the difference between using, say, a CNC is I just don't get all the rounding. I'd still have to, if I was doing wood, I'd still have to, if I wanted rounded edges and things like that, I'd still have to router it out, right? Is that really the only difference that we're talking about, or?
You could do some 3D relief. These lasers are capable of it. However, it leaves a pretty charred, you know, there would be some sanding afterward. You could actually define, you know, a radius or a contour around the outside of something with a 3D depth map. But a CNC would be your best bet for that kind of stuff.
Okay. And drilling holes as well? Can you punch holes through wood with the laser, or is that not as?
Absolutely.
You know, clean
Absolutely.
holes
You
like
could make
like
you
they
could
were
make
drilled.
pegboard if you wanted to. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, I don't want to monopolize you guys' webinar. I just have one more question.
Sure.
I live in northern Michigan, and there'll be times when, you know, if I get this laser, where obviously I'm not going to be running it, you know, 8 hours a day initially, and it gets really cold here. And
I'm in Nebraska, Nick, and it
yeah,
gets really cold
I
here
have an
too. And I
unheated
ran out of my garage for
Yeah.
a year and a half, and I just used RV antifreeze in the chiller. Didn't have a single issue. Didn't even worry about it in the middle of the night. Didn't leave space heaters on in the garage. Nothing. No issues
Well,
whatsoever.
it was an unheated garage, and you just let it run with that, and you had no problems with it.
None whatsoever. When I was running the machine, I would turn the space heaters on because your ambient temperature will affect your beam quality, as does your humidity. But yeah, no issues at all.
Well, my plan would be to build a shop in my garage and insulate it, maybe put a mini split in. But, you know,
Smart.
if that thing goes off, stops working in the middle of the night and freezes, you know, that's what my worry would be, you know, things like that. So that's good to know. You guys have been great, man. Thank you so much for answering all my questions. I really appreciate it. If I, you know, I pretty much decided if I get a laser, I'm going to get a Thunder. If I get a CO2 laser,
Gotcha.
Even if you get a fiber, get a Thunder.
Well, the fiber that I'm interested in, I got a buddy who's a welder, and he could, if I could cut steel, you know, he could send me business. He could keep me busy. But, you know, the
That'd be more of a
cheapest
flatbed fiber then.
CNC fiber lasers, you know, 50 grand, you know, and I'm just, and it weighs 16,000 pounds or 12,000 pounds, I think. And I just can't see running that thing out of my garage. And the learning curve is so steep for me for what my history is, that I'm just, even though he could give me the business, I'm just not ready to go that route. So I'm really looking at, you know, a CO2 laser for the most part. And if I did marking, then I would consider a small fiber laser as well.
As far as the learning curve too, just to give you an idea, I'm a database administrator by day, so I have an IT background. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
It practically runs itself, right?
It does, yeah.
Not quite, but not for me anyway. So,
do you use Lightburn, Brian? Is that what you use, Lightburn for you? Or?
Yes, absolutely.
Lightburn's the only way to go.
I'm a D- student, and I'm doing all right.
Yeah, if Sam can do it, anybody can do it.
I guess that's right. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. So, all right. Well, yeah, if you have anything else, just let us know. If you have any technical questions, you can always email support@thunderlaserusa.com. And then we've also got, I don't know if you've seen it, our knowledge base with all the knowledge base articles. We've got a technical database there with all kinds of good stuff. So if you can't find something, let us know. We'll be glad to help. So I don't know where we're at in our timeline, Jim. Where are we at, Jim?
28 minutes. 28 minutes. We need to jump to the unless somebody else, we got still new people in here.
Yeah, we do. Let's give. I'll tell you what, we can talk about a frequently asked questions things. Like I said, we can evolve. We've got some new people in here. We want to definitely take advantage of that. So if anybody's got any questions, Corey or anyone, feel free to kick it on and let us know.
Yeah. Okay. I'm working with a 2460 watt. Okay, a Nova 2460 watt. Got a problem.
Okay.
No matter what I burn, no matter what setting, what speed, what power, I cannot get a clean burn off an engraving or a cut on wood. Everything, and I mean everything, has scorch marks or burn marks.
Okay.
I've tried adjusting power. I've tried adjusting speed.
What do you consider in scorch and burn marks? Because a laser inherently is going to leave a charred surface.
Yeah, there's there's a couple of different things. There's a condition right when the laser hit, when it starts to fire, that it has to pierce through the material and go, and you're going to get something there, especially until it pierces all the way through. And that can be corrected with lead in. So there's some concessions in Lightburn to help mitigate that. If you're getting just smut and just junk on your material in general, a lot of times that's evident that the air needs to be adjusted
Okay.
a little bit for the air assist. There's also some things, for instance, especially if you're on a Mac, especially if you're on USB, if you use the start button instead of send, it can invert your air. So you may have your low air set properly and your high air set properly. You may have low selected for your engrave, for instance, yet the high air will come on because of a sequencing issue. So there's caveats that way too. The best way to diagnose that, and we'd be glad to talk about it here, it's kind of hard to see it, on the webcam. If it's something like that, is you could email some actual snapshots, a little close up of the image to support, and also the Lightburn file that you're using. That way we can look at the settings that you're using and see if, something's turned on the dwell or something like that for the start or stop delay. Sometimes some things inadvertently get set that can lead to issues like that too, and we can better diagnose that way. But we'll be glad to, talk about that here, and try to help you mitigate that too.
Okay.
So,
Like I say, it just a certain level of burn is one thing, but I've got there are some things that I cut that get almost like a shadow. You know what I'm saying? Or when I go to engrave things, there'll be a shadow all the way around the entire engraving that's 1/4 inch thick.
Right, I
Okay,
know
then
what you're talking about, and it could actually be the plywood that you're using and the glue that they're using in that plywood. I know that a lot of plywood suppliers have had to change their glue suppliers, and so some of the plywood that I've been getting lately, it's been doing that, where it just seems like a volcano of crap coming out of the kerf, right?
Yeah.
And mask your stuff first and take it off after. That'll get rid of it, but it sucks.
Yeah. And a lot of times you can dial it in, with your speed and power and air, a combination of those three, and at least mitigate it as much as possible. But I have seen them, materials differ enough to do that. I've had it in my case where I'll be engraving and I'll actually engrave into a glue layer, and I get a lot more than I could back off my power a little bit. Then I'm not all the way down in that layer. I'm still in wood, and that mitigates that kind of thing. Either blow all the way through it or back off a little bit and not just burn in the layer itself. So it could be the depth. You may want to try to adjust your speed and power to adjust your depth up or down to see if you can get away from any of those areas, and that kind of thing.
Take some good pictures of it and send it to us at
Yeah.
the and we'll work through it.
Okay.
We'll try to do the best that we can, especially if there's shadowing. If there's real shadowing on top, that could be an alignment issue. So
Scanning offsets.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we could probably fine tune for you.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, 'cause the biggest thing is I've just got into the color engravings with powder coating.
Yeah.
And sanding the material while it's in the laser to get rid of that, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of without it moving.
You have to keep it in place.
You don't have to leave it in the laser.
Process.
Why are you leaving it in the laser?
Because it's a multi-part process.
I know, but that's what print and cut is for, my friend.
Well, yeah, that's true. But
if you want a video, let me know.
You don't have to worry about it.
I do. I'd love a video.
Yeah.
For print and cut, maybe that would.
We definitely
I
need a
have
print
some
cut
stuff
video
that I
because I
bring
saw
off the
something about it a couple
CNC.
days ago, and I can't find anything on it other than there's maybe 1 or 2 YouTube videos about it, and Lightburn's less than helpful for print and cut.
Print and cut.
Yeah, I found the settings, I found the options, but I can't figure out how to make it work.
I'll work on one.
All right. CeeLo to the rescue.
Robert Kofod might have one. That's where I think where I learned mine. It works great.
Yeah, he does.
Send you the one I've got.
So.
Is there a setting now in Lightburn where you can ramp up the exhaust before the cut starts?
Yes.
Yes.
How do you do that?
It's in the same place that you find your scanning offsets, I think, in the device settings, and it'll be called start delay and end delay. You won't need the end delay because that's a function of our TL timer. The fan already stays on 15 or 20 seconds after the job completes to evacuate any residual smoke, and that's built into the hardware. But we didn't have a way to do it at the beginning. So if you set that to 4 or 5 or 8 seconds, 8 feels like an eternity. I have mine set to 8, and you push the button and you're used to everything going, and everything kicks on, but the job doesn't start. And you're like, what's wrong with the laser? What's wrong with the laser? And then it takes off.
Brian, I set it mine to 8, and I was like, man,
So
the final question on Jeopardy. What is this?
yeah, but it is in there, and I think I've got an article about it even on the. I might not. Yeah, I do. There's an article. Let me see if I can find it. I'll post it. Let's see. Light burn start delay. There it is. So chat. I'll just pop it in the chat. That way you guys will have the link. But yeah, it is in the device settings, and start delay is what it's called. And that'll allow the fan to kick on before the job actually outputs.
Yeah,
Let
about
it
2
spool
seconds.
up.
Plenty.
2 seconds is
Thank you. I
plenty.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is where I
So-
give my piece. You can also rewire the machine. We've got
Yep.
directions about that where you can control the fan with the laser switch. So if you like to dry run, say, tumblers or other objects, you can use that. And then when you're ready to go, you flip the switch up, your power supply for your laser kicks in, the fan kicks on, you hit the start button, and you're not waiting for it to begin. So
And I'll put the link to that in the chat as well. And then there's also one about adding a manual switch where you can have a separate switch just to turn it on and off, which seems like the least least desirable one since we have these other options. But I'll put a link to that as well.
the thing I like about having the fan on, like when you're cutting acrylics or MDFs, letting it just run and run and run and get that stank out of there.
Mm-hmm.
With the switch, you can just leave it on for a very long time. I don't know what the TL timer limit is, but it's not infinity.
No,
So.
90 seconds maybe. 90, I don't know. We'll have to try it. I need to try it. So, all right. So what are we doing? Are we gonna come up with a list, or are we beyond that? Or do we have any other questions?
I opened
Yeah,
my notes so that I can
question
write
for
down what we need
I
to.
was working on the rotary last night on a smaller cylindrical thing, and I thought the head might hit the adjustment, so I spun it around, but then my image got mirrored.
Right.
And I tried clicking mirror image and redoing it, but it still came up backwards. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, because the rotary's spinning the opposite direction. You got to make it spin the other way.
There's a
Is there
setting.
any way to compensate for that, or?
Yeah, there is a reverse setting on the rotary. If you go under rotary tools, so laser tools, right? I'm trying to pull it up. I had to switch windows, sorry, and wait for Lightburn to fire. It should be under laser tools, rotary, and then you can reverse or mirror image.
Is that the mirror image button? I didn't see a reverse.
Yeah, I think it is mirror image.
Yeah, I did that, and it still came out the same way. I tried both sides of this thing, and it.
Oh, the mirror output rotary.
I'm sorry, what?
Mirror output to rotary.
Yeah, that's what I did, and it came out the same way.
Are you resending the file afterwards?
I'm sorry, Jason.
You don't need to, because that's a change in the machine settings.
Okay, I missed the first part of that. Why is it mirroring? What's the issue?
Well, I'm assuming it's because I turned the rotary around, and because I was afraid that the head was going to hit the adjustment. It was really close.
So if you did that, then all you have to do, if you look at the motor, there's two colored wires that go into the motor. There's two gray and then two individual colored wires.
Right.
If you take those two colored wires and switch them, that will reverse the direction of the motor, and you can leave it in there like that, and you won't have to mirror it. You'll just rotate your image to the right instead of to the left like normal.
Okay.
So
what you smaller cylindrical stuff, so it was the head was coming real close to that.
It's close to really small stuff for sure. But yeah, if you just swap those two wires and all you do is you push the little orange pin in and then you pull the wire out. And then when you put it back in, you swap them and put it back in, you do the same thing. You push the little orange pin in and then shove the wire in the hole. But yeah,
Right.
just those two colored wires. Leave the gray ones alone. Just the two colored wires, you'll reverse those.
Which
Do we
colors are
have a
they?
picture of that,
It's
Chris?
It's blue and yellow green are the two wires.
Okay.
So you'll basically just swap those two wires around. Is all you'll do.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I got a bunch of these things to do, so that's great. Thanks, guys.
And then if you ever want to put it back the normal way, then you just swap them back.
Okay,
Jason,
I
cool.
thought
Yeah, I see you.
we
Thanks.
had a picture.
Yeah, I see you, Chris. Thanks, man.
Actually,
Awesome.
it's not a very good picture, is it? It doesn't show what we need to show. But anyway,
Hey Tom, I've had good success. I just mirrored the artwork in Lightburn itself versus using the functions of the machine or whatever, and it worked out fine with the rotary spun around. Rewiring it's kind of a pain, right? Versus clicking a button in software.
So just
But
right
but if
Lightburn,
he
do it that way.
if he uses it consistently the other way around, it's pointless to leave the wiring the way it is when he can just switch it and
Yeah.
be done with it and never have to worry about it. But if
Yeah,
it's
it's-
something that
My
you're gonna
daughter's
flip,
trying last night, but I might have a guy that wants me to do a bunch of them. So
yeah, I mean it's a simple the pin. It's just a push the pin in, pull the wire out. There's
yeah, I don't
no
mind with the I'm good at that stuff, so I'm good with that.
yeah, it's
But-
pretty simple.
Awesome. Thank you.
sure. All right. Does anybody else have anything? We were supposed to come up with a list of frequently asked questions. Somehow I'm not sure if that's going to get all complete. We can work on that at another time.
We have a
So,
bunch of questions that were asked today. Frequently asked today questions.
okay.
No,
Do
they
you
were
have
already,
some?
they were already asked.
Oh, you talking about in the chat?
Yeah, they were already asked today.
So there was a question about which rotary you can use in the Nova 24, and I think any current rotary will fit now with the hangers, which would be the Junior and the Full. I think are the two that are available for it now.
Correct.
The low roller will fit if you have one. But is that right, Jason? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Cool. Jim's laughing at me. I can hold it together for another 17 minutes, Jim. Just help me with a question.
I was laughing because of the other Brian's message to me. I just now seen it. He wondered why I was sitting in the
Finally
dark.
read that.
Yeah, I just now clicked on chat.
So Pat asked which is better to use, Rotoboss or PyBurn. So we only officially support the Rotoboss. Number one, because we've got years of data on its success, and we have all the parts. And don't fix it if it ain't broken, right? It's been a wonderful device. The PyBurn is probably a great machine too. It's Chevy and Ford. You know, do you want to sit out in the parking lot and argue about Chevy and Ford? They both get you from A to B. They'll both do tumblers. There's things that I like about the PyBurn better. There are just a few. If I had to buy one, I'd buy a Rotoboss. And that's not because I don't like the PyBurn or because I have a special affinity for Jason. It's just because from my standpoint, I would buy the Rotoboss. We have documentation on it. It's never been bad. You know, I'm not saying either one of them is better than the other. I have never tried a PyBurn, so I can't give a really full opinion. I've held it in my hand and I put it right back in the box, to be honest, because it didn't matter at that point. I didn't want to support two totally different units. You know, that adds complexity. People are using them both. And if anybody has one or the other and want to expand on it, you know, that's fine. I don't want it. Sometimes this conversation can turn into a pissing match in the Facebook groups, and I think we've pretty much quelled that. So I don't want that to flare up.
Right.
You know, there's enough pie here for everybody. That's a terrible Yeah.
No pun intended.
The pun was not intended. But
What's this going on?
if I'm going to shut up now and let somebody talk about how good a Rotoboss is.
I've got the Rotoboss Junior in my 35100, and I love it. It works great. Does absolutely everything I need it to do. I haven't had a single issue with it. I mean, I don't have any reason to throw it in the trash and go look at another rotary. I mean, and I've got the one with all the 3D printed parts. It's not the new fancy
full
one
metal.
with all the nice aluminum, extruded aluminum stuff, but
Mhm.
again, even with the 3D printed parts, they work great.
Yeah.
Not
Does
a problem.
anybody have a pie burn?
Well, there you go.
Not
Hey, I do have a question,
necessarily
Brian.
there. You
I was gonna say there's one person in this group right now I know's got one.
So,
Well, Travis,
and that's fine. If
Oh,
I
Sam.
just want to give equal time because I don't really have a preference either way. To be real honest with you, from a personal standpoint.
Rotoboss, Jason.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm on. I'm probably on my 7th Rotoboss now, and
Right.
I mean
Just
every rendition is better than the last, and there's really never been an issue as far as performance. It just works. I mean, I come from the aluminum one that was aluminum on aluminum slide, wiggly. I mean, it was just horrible. It was the factory one from a crappy manufacturer, and this thing just works. It holds everything down correctly. If I do 100 cups and one messes up, it's not Rotoboss's fault. It's something I did. So yeah, I mean, I can't say more about the Rotoboss for sure.
Nick, did you have something?
If you like the stuff, wait until you see what's coming.
Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead, Nick.
Why are you on your 7th Rotoboss?
Why what?
Why are you on your 7th Rotoboss?
Because of different machines.
Okay.
The original machines I had were AP lasers, and they came with really, really crappy boat anchors. And I ended up upgrading all of them and that was 3. So I upgraded 3, and now, between each rendition of Thunder I have, so I'm actually probably closer to 10 now. But yeah, I mean, Jason's a good guy, and I can't say more about what he's done with this rotary tool for sure.
Yeah,
Nick, go ahead when you got a chance. Nick had something.
So as somebody's coming into this fresh, I look at these rotaries and I wonder some things. It seems like if you wanted to do, you got an order for 100 of these things or something, it just seems the most time consuming thing seems to be getting the whatever you're engraving in and out level. Yep. And obviously if you're going to do the same thing over and over again, it's a little bit faster. But why don't anybody make something that will do 2 or 4, and spin them at the same time, as opposed to just one at a time?
There are some different ways to accomplish that, and some fixtures that allow that in a way. But if you're using the same cup and you're using the same design, and I don't make a lot of things, but one thing I do is cups for this guy that I know. I can do a cup every 2 minutes, and it's a perfect workflow. While one is engraving, I'm pulling the next one out of the box, pulling the paper off, taking the top off, setting it here. As soon as it gets done, all I have to do is take that other cup out, set it to the side, put in the new cup, hit the button, and while it's running, I'm cleaning off the cup that I just did, putting it back in the box and setting it to the side. By the time that's done and I grab the next one, this one's finished. And I can literally pump out a cup every 2 minutes, and it's incredibly efficient, even doing one piece at a time. Once you get it set up, if you're doing large batches, if you do one growler and the next one's a 20-ounce tumbler and the next one's a stemless wine glass, then yeah, you're going to be, of course, spending way more time in retooling and adjusting your fixtures than you are production. But if you're wanting repeatability, having 2 or 3 in there may cause you to take actually a little longer than just popping one in there one at a time. That's just my take on it.
Well, if you're custom engraving somebody's name or whatever, I mean, it seems like if you had 3 or 4, something that would spin 3 or 4, then, you'd be taking advantage of the speed of the laser as opposed to the transition time. But I get your point. I mean, because I'm looking at it being a one-man show over here.
You
right?
can preload all your files though, right, Nick? So the laser will hold the files. In fact, that's how you want to run them anyways. You want to send the file to the laser and then start it from the laser. So let's say you do have, I don't know, 50 custom ones with each one a unique name. Well, you just send all 50 of those files to the laser, and then you do the same exact workflow that Brian's talking about. The only difference is you move from one file to the next. It's a 2-button click, and you're on to the next one.
Yeah, and
no difference.
Some of the ways that I've seen multiples, they're more of a novelty. I don't know that they would be an everyday production kind of thing. I think it would take just as much time to put 3 cups in a fixture as it would be to swap it out 3 times. I think it becomes a wash, at least the way the technology is right now and the way that we're loading them and the devices that we use to turn them.
So,
You want to go to fiber though, you can get a rotary that brings them
like
around, right?
like a turntable.
indexer.
That's what it's called. Thank you. Yeah.
Now there was
Picturing something that's flat like a coin or just a business card is way different than fixturing 3 or 4 different things that are going to be on a rotary. You can just get one little thing off, and that's it's turning something's a much more complex, file than something that is flat. And I think you're going to be better off doing like Brian says, doing one at a time, just personally.
I mean, those of you guys that know me, I used to have a tumbler company, and I would do hundreds to thousands. And, one side, one logo at a time, and then taking the cup out and doing names on the other side was actually much faster than doing the whole, doing one logo and having the system come around and do the other side. So I would actually do all of my logos, and then all the cups went back in and did the name again. And oddly enough, faster that way than letting it run that negative space every single cup. So there is a method to it, for sure.
Yeah. If you get that workflow figured out though, and you feel it, it just all meshes. You're not wasting any moment of time because you're packaging one and getting the next one ready while that one's running. So there's like zero inefficiency. You're not having to sit there like this, and wait on it. I was doing some business cards on the fiber laser, and it only took 20 seconds to do a card that way, and I never could get the flow right. It ended up taking me 2 minutes to do each card because I would go over there and go, okay, I'll wait on it and put the next one in, and then by the time I was ready to go type an answer in the ticket system or something, it'd be done again and just be sitting there. I'm like, wow, I couldn't keep up with it. But the tumblers at 2 minutes, a tumbler is a perfect amount of time. 2.5 minutes to get that entire workflow just flawless.
Mm-hmm.
So do you rig the lasers to leave the top open then when you're doing the engraving for the tumblers?
You can. That means you have to defeat the interlock, which you can do. There's a board where you just push a button. We make it easy to defeat the interlocks if you need to run with the lid up. And now Chris is laughing at me. But we do recommend you don the proper eyewear, the PPE, that's specific to that wavelength of laser with the lid up. Most people don't do that, but it's a good idea to practice your due diligence and not get complacent if you like your eyeballs.
So the workflow you described, you were opening the laser and pulling the cup out, closing the laser?
No, I left the lid up. I didn't bother. Yeah.
So there is a company that released, I guess, a promo video, 6 weeks ago, about like this 6-cup hot dog roller looking roller rotary. Yep. I don't think that's gotten any traction. There hasn't been any buzz about it.
No traction is right. The cups all slip. I bet you anything.
Yeah,
the thing is those things slip. They slip. I know a couple people that have them. And the problem they have is if you like, especially if you got Arctic or Yeti or whatever, and you line everything up with the logos
Yep.
and everything's driven together. So maybe the first two are lined up, but the rest of them get offline because of all the movements.
Yep. Just like you've got
and
your
go ahead.
backlash for your offsets and stuff, you're gonna have backlash in anything that's driving those 6 cups.
Come on,
So if you're
Jason.
trying to do multi-sided, but like I said, there hasn't been anybody that I've seen post and rave about it. It looks like a hot dog spinner. The other thing is you've got 6 full-size cups that you're having to traverse. I think it's a 2x3 grid. Or was it a 4x2? So you're having to traverse the entire length of a cup to get to the next cup. It's
Nick, that's another thing to think about. Just the negative traversal moves that is not doing anything to get to the next thing is time. So, you could be going back and forth directly over the engraving, but once you start traversing over negative space, it's just time wasted. And those are all things.
I haven't really seen how fast, everybody on their videos almost always speeds things up and things like that. I guess I don't have a good feel for how fast these things.
And two, the majority of your speed, what you're thinking with, I think, two, which would slow it down, is that your speed is, hey, Brian, mute.
Mad Max.
Thanks. Your speed too is, you got to remember, your speed, to make this more simple, is left to right, not front to back. So you want to have dead space trying to move to the next cup. Am I getting this right? If I'm saying this correctly? So your speed is going to be going back and forth this way. Where if you're trying to engrave more this way and do multiple cups at the same time, or jump from one cup to the next, it's actually going to be counterproductive than just doing one at a time.
Yeah, well, the only benefit to doing multiple cups at a time, because I've actually have a not really a version, but a model of the Rotobus that can do 2. But the only benefit you're really gaining from that is if you're doing multiple tasks and you need a little bit more time to bounce between them. Obviously you're going to double your time on the laser or more by doing multiples. But in reality, you're still swapping them out. You're still doing the same functions. It's just giving you a little bit more time between start and stop, basically. But I mean, like Brian said, once you get into a workflow of engraving, unpacking, cleaning, packing, after you get like 4 or 5 of them done, and then you start that workflow, it's just a continuous loop the whole time, and you can knock through them in no time. So it's not. It might be a little distracting or something, but
sometimes simpler is just faster.
Is there a knowledge base article about turning the lid switch off?
Yes.
Well, you can do it in Lightburn as well.
You don't want to, though.
Yeah.
Because then you'll forget to turn it back on, and that's in the machine settings. That's bad.
Well,
we made a whole button for it, a whole control board, just so you can push a button. So we need to use
turned it back on in like 10 years.
Well,
I turn all mine off. I never turn them on, but that's just me.
We got liability concerns, Jay.
What's that?
I posted it, Clinton. I put it in the chat for that article.
Hey, can I ask a question real quick before we end?
Sure, absolutely.
So I've been having an issue with just the last couple of days where I'm trying to send a file over to the laser, and I'm on Ethernet. I'm not on USB. Let's just get that out of the way right off the bat.
Right.
But it tells me that there's a file transfer error, that the laser's busy, and it's not doing anything. It's not cutting or engraving at the time. I'll try to resend it several times. It'll fail. I'll walk over, hit reset on the laser. It'll go through the reset process, and then it'll send fine.
I think if you hit escape, you'll find that it'll do it too. If you're not in the main screen on the main program on the control panel, it'll give you that error. Like if you're in a menu, like if you're in a diagnostic menu or even in a speed power menu, any of those, I think if you're in a menu on that controller, if you're not out on the main screen, it will give you that failure.
100%.
Yeah, it happened to me all the time.
I'll check that, but I'm pretty sure I was on the main screen.
If If
Yeah.
that's still happening, we might need to do a default reset. And if that doesn't help,
Okay.
you might want to throw a ticket in on it. Do you want the
Well,
link on the default reset article? Chris
Yeah,
has some
please.
input.
one thing that you may try, and I don't know if this will do it or not. A lot of people don't know you can do it, but you can edit your layers. If you press the enter button, it'll drop you down to that right-hand screen where you can select
Yeah.
the layer. You may be in that mode, and I don't know if you're in that mode where you're attempting to edit a layer. It may not be waiting on a file because it's editing a current project file. So that may be one of the hangups, and that's you just get there by
I
pressing the enter button.
rarely edit those once they're sent, though. I
Yeah.
hardly ever go in and actually change them after the fact, though. So I don't think that's it. But
And
yeah,
I
I'll
think
watch for that too.
sometimes, even if you're clearing out your files, that's a big deal too. But I still think sometimes when I delete my files through Lightburn, I think maybe there might be some garbage left over. You know what I
Format.
mean? Sometimes I do the delete all thing again and turn it off and back on, and it just like sometimes it does wonky stuff, and then
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if it's consistent, especially if it's enough to be bothersome, please don't hesitate. Just shoot us an email real quick.
Yep,
And
I will.
we'll dig a little deeper, reload the firmware. We'll do something. We'll hit it with a hammer. We'll figure out what's going on with it.
I know you will. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right, cool, man. It's 4:00.
That's what I was going. I was trying to get your attention. I was letting you know to kill the recording
Oh.
for time.
Yeah.
5 o'clock.
Right on the nose.
What I
I'm
need
gonna
to
kill the
have, right?
recording.
What I need to do is